In terms of requirement, in terms of requirement, our old feelings are always renewed anew to feel younger, as such nature replenishes and nature remains. And so I walk a lot in Sweden, seeing this and that, hoping for something, to see something unusual, perhaps a nicer, larger patch of flowers, always available, never lacking in expression, thus when autumn blooms. Thus, however much, such is nature and her quiet. Thus when I walk sometimes I do encounter some strange woods of some other manner. I thus often think back, no matter what the scenery. I thus think ahead, no matter what is in the way. There are always paths that lead around, and for those less curious, ways through. Thus in solitary desperation, or should I say rather popular expression, people do come and go, but never really to be met. Long walks, you see, are all for everyone, and though everyone knows it, few really do take some steps of measure. To worry about others is pointless, you see. So when thus caught in the act of expression, nature does somehow prove and point without much to be wasted. And so nature, for lack of requirement of stating more, just to enjoy. Thus I come to the question of who would acquire the most points. As such, there must always be a motivator, someone who, by dispensation, does acquire and has some method with which others are able to gain inspiration to express from what you are observing. So thus I did come by some great inspiration due to old friendships. As nature ages, so too she remains. And for remainers, there are always those who remain in history, marked down as special. One such friend, Stephen Ellery, concert conductor. I share with you these moments when we last met him. great awaitance. Perhaps someday Stephen will become even greater and thus write some pieces about Swedish nature. Of course, that is all speculation, but as artists go, so too does their measure increase. Expression, and we all hope to see more of it. Just like we enjoy the quiet. Mozart, you see, is written, and so too is Bach, so too Beethoven. It's all about the numbers, you see. Music, oh music of old culture, always on the go to people interested in nature. The sounds in the background, the sounds in the foreground, thus giving you and thus not letting others take from you what has been given in the making. Thus you were given music, thus you were to keep it, enjoy it, share it. Thus the nature does abound, moving all around, wind, earth, fire, water and sun, all things together bound, all things together given by someone in the middle, by someone who articulates, someone who creates. And so in such stillness we may acquire such an attitude to which, between us, from beginning to end, thus just to state openly and honestly, this is for you, for all you music lovers, and thus how to present nature in its sight regaining such compliments to her nature or of being, is to simply say yes, that the wheat does accept it, and says with great honor, you made me happy for it. With great honor, thus, when thus the wheat gives to its creator, and thus state, would you say the same for me, you pebbles on the beach? And of course, such is the nature that it replies, oh yes, and I will even give you more, or perhaps less, not to even the score, but to show you that you're important. And when people climb high on the bird tower, the landscape seems to edge on, slowly moving over to the horizon, over the hills and to places where to no left or right really matters. One follows the path, and when one does not come to a position, of any plans ahead for the 10 miles. It would seem that neither is there any other objection to one's presence in such lonely measure, but none would really chase and none would really await. Thus no quiet when one hears nothing. Such is tradition and such is its measure, that church goers often measure the music of the halls as though given unto someone who thus is the observer of such art to be greater. And so there are feelings, and so there are moods. And while being, even as such of the 1800s, pineapples and cactus grow in tropical climates inside of greenhouses. As such, reminiscent of art in its old styles, still living, that never really closed up any other, and thus exploration is free for those who fit in quite nicely between the openings, and thus great gentlemen once walked in. Enough stature, they said, to thus appease one's way ahead, as one sees the clearing opening, and those who thus try to enter, for want of being solitary, and in their own means quite secretly. One such man once stood here, looking out over all that he could have, all that in some place would be, hidden from others, so as to see the horizon from such great vantage point, and thus to also say so, I did not give thus the ocean to you, my madame. I thus climbed into my comfort, without any real need to worry, for the higher up you get, the more of the earth you see. And is that not all power to those who are lonely, seeking no one to acquire? I thus did come here one day, seeking solitary repute, not as though I was really dying, but an affliction of loneliness came over me, and I told myself quite clearly I made a promise I would not leave early. And thus in the afternoons of calm surrender, nature herself would have been argumentative, had it of course not been for the niceties and of social acquaintance. For music continues, and conductors write history.